At my wife's funeral, her sister whispered, she didn't want you alone. The weight of Sarah's casket on my shoulder felt like nothing compared to the weight in my chest. As we carried her down the aisle of the church where we'd married just 5 years earlier, I caught a glimpse of her photograph, that radiant smile that had first captivated me at a bookstore on a rainy Tuesday. If you're watching this and have ever lost someone who was your entire world, you know this moment. That surreal feeling where you're both present and absent, where the ground beneath you seems to shift with every step. If this story resonates with you, please consider subscribing to the channel for more stories that explore the depths of human experience and the unexpected paths grief can take us down. I was 34 when Sarah died. Too young to be a widower, too young to be standing beside a hole in the ground watching roses fall onto polished wood. The cancer had been swift and merciless, giving us barely 8 months from diagnosis to the end. 8 months of hospital rooms, of hope that dissolved into acceptance, of whispered promises in the darkness that I knew I couldn't keep. I'll be okay, I had told her. The greatest lie I'd ever spoken. The funeral passed in a blur of faces and voices. Hands squeezing my shoulder, words that didn't register. I nodded mechanically, thanked people automatically. My parents had flown in from Arizona, hovering nearby with helpless expressions. Sarah's parents stood across the room, her mother occasionally breaking into fresh sobs that echoed my internal screams. It was at the reception afterward when it happened. I was standing alone by the window, watching rain streak down the glass. How fitting that the sky would mourn with me, when I felt a presence beside me. Megan, Sarah's younger sister by 3 years, but so similar they were often mistaken for twins. The same chestnut hair, though Megan wore hers shorter. The same green eyes, now reddened with grief. She made me promise, Megan said, her voice barely audible above the murmur of conversation behind us. The night before, when she knew. I turned to look at her, really look at her, for the first time that day. She didn't want you to be alone, David. Megan's voice cracked. She made me promise to tell you that. I didn't understand then what those words meant. How could I? In that moment, they were just another well-intentioned platitude, another attempt to comfort the inconsolable. I nodded, squeezed her hand, and turned back to the rain. The weeks that followed were a study in emptiness. I returned to our apartment, our home, and found it transformed into a museum of what had been. Her coffee mug still in the sink. Her novel still open on the nightstand, a bookmark holding her place in a story she would never finish. Her scent still lingering on her pillow, fading a little more each night I clutched it to my chest. I took bereavement leave from the architectural firm where I worked, but after 3 weeks, the silence of our apartment became too oppressive. I returned to work, grateful for the distraction of blueprints and client meetings, only to find myself staring blankly at my computer screen, unable to remember what I was supposed to be designing. You should eat something, my colleague James would say, appearing at my office door with takeout. I would nod, accept the food, and throw it away untouched after he left. It was Megan who finally broke through the fog. She called one evening, a month after the funeral. "I'm outside your building," she said when I answered. "I have groceries and I'm coming up." I didn't have the energy to argue. When I opened the door, she stood there with 2 large paper bags and determination in her eyes, Sarah's eyes. "This place is a disaster," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. She wasn't wrong. Dishes had piled up. Mail had accumulated. Laundry remained unwashed. "I'm fine," I said automatically. Megan set the bags down on the counter and turned to face me. "No, you're not. And that's okay. But you need to eat something that isn't from a vending machine, and this place needs air that doesn't smell like grief." She opened windows, cleared dishes, and cooked pasta while I sat at the kitchen island watching her move through the space that had been Sarah's domain. There was something both painful and comforting about seeing her there, this echo of my wife, this reminder of what I'd lost. "She would hate seeing you like this," Megan said as she placed a plate in front of me. She loved your smile. Said it was the first thing she noticed about you. I managed a few bites of pasta, the first real food I'd tasted in weeks. I don't know how to do this, Megan. How to be here without her. Neither do I, she admitted, sitting across from me with her own plate. But I think we figure it out together. That's what she wanted. That night was the first step on a long road. Megan began coming over twice a week, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with movies, sometimes just to sit in silence with me. We shared stories about Sarah, the silly ones, the tender ones, the ones that made us laugh through tears. 3 months after the funeral, Megan convinced me to join a grief support group. I went reluctantly, sitting silently through the first 2 sessions before finally speaking. The words came haltingly at first, then in a rush that left me breathless and sobbing in a room full of strangers who nodded with understanding. The hardest part, I told them, is that I still turn to tell her things. I see something on TV, or hear a song, and I turn to share it with her before remembering she's not there. A woman across the circle nodded. 6 years for me, she said. And I still do that sometimes. There was both despair and comfort in that, the idea that this feeling might never fully leave me. 6 months after Sarah died, I found a box in her closet while finally sorting through her clothes to donate. Inside were letters, dozens of them, each addressed to me in her handwriting. The first envelope said simply, "For when I'm gone." With trembling hands, I opened it. "My darling David," she had written. "If you're reading this, then I've left you, and I'm so sorry for that. I want you to know that loving you has been the greatest joy of my life. Every moment, even the difficult ones, has been a gift because I spent them with you. But now I need you to do something for me. I need you to live, David. Not just exist, but truly live." I read through tears, her voice so clear in my mind I could almost hear her speaking the words. "I've asked Megan to look after you. Not because you need looking after, you're the strongest person I know, but because I couldn't bear the thought of you facing this alone. Let her help you. Let people in. And when you're ready, when the weight begins to lift even a little, remember that loving once with your whole heart means you have the capacity to love again. That wouldn't be a betrayal, my love. It would be a testament to what we shared." I read all the letters that night, each one written for different moments she anticipated in my future. One for our anniversary. One for Christmas. One simply titled, "For a Really Bad Day." Her final gifts to me: permission to grieve, permission to heal, permission to eventually find joy again. The next morning, I called Megan. "Can we get coffee?" I asked. "There's something I need to show you." We met at the cafe where Sarah and I had our first date. I brought the box of letters, showed Megan what her sister had done. "She told me about these," Megan said softly. "Made me promise not to mention them until you found them on your own." "She asked you to look after me," I said. It wasn't a question. Megan nodded, her eyes on her coffee cup. "I would have anyway. Your family, David." "Thank you," I said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "For keeping your promise to her. For not letting me disappear into myself." Something shifted between us that day, not romantically, but fundamentally. The shared grief that had connected us began to transform into something else, a friendship built on mutual understanding and the love we both had for Sarah. A year after the funeral, I returned to the cemetery with Megan beside me. We placed fresh flowers on Sarah's grave, and I told my wife about the past year, the hard days, the moments of unexpected laughter, the slow journey towards something that resembled living again. "I think she would be proud of us," Megan said as we walked back to the car. "I think she orchestrated this whole thing," I replied, and for the first time in a long time, my smile felt genuine. 2 years after Sarah died, I went on a date. It felt like a betrayal at first, but I heard Sarah's words from her letter: it would be a testament to what we shared. I called Megan afterward, conflicted and guilty. She would be cheering you on, Megan assured me. Probably offering fashion advice and telling you to get a haircut. I laughed because it was true. That was exactly what Sarah would have done. The date didn't lead anywhere, nor did the next few. But they were steps forward, each one a little easier than the last. 3 years after the funeral, Megan called me in tears. She'd been laid off from her job in marketing, another casualty of company downsizing. "Come stay with me," I offered without hesitation. "Just until you figure things out." She moved into my guest room the following weekend. Our routine shifted to accommodate each other, morning coffee shared over job listings, evenings spent cooking together or watching movies. There was comfort in the companionship, in not returning to an empty apartment at the end of the day. It was during this time that I noticed something changing. Not suddenly, but gradually, like the slow shift from winter to spring. Megan wasn't just Sarah's sister anymore. She was Megan, with her own laugh that was nothing like Sarah's, her own opinions that sometimes clashed with mine, her own way of moving through the world that was entirely her own. 4 months into her stay, as we were washing dishes after dinner, she turned to me with soapy hands and serious eyes. "I think I should find my own place," she said. "You don't have to," I replied. "I like having you here." "That's why I need to go," she said quietly. "I'm afraid of what's happening between us." I set down the dish towel. "What do you mean?" "David," she sighed, "I made a promise to my sister to look after you, not to fall in love with you." The words hung between us, honest and terrifying. "Megan." "You don't have to say anything," she interrupted. "I know it's complicated and probably wrong and definitely not what either of us expected. But I need some distance to figure out if what I'm feeling is real or just proximity and shared grief." She moved out the following week, into a small studio apartment across town. The distance between us felt both necessary and painful. I found myself missing her presence, not as a substitute for Sarah, but as herself. 2 months passed with only occasional texts and brief coffee meetings that felt strained with unspoken words. Then, on the 4th anniversary of Sarah's death, we met at the cemetery as we had each year. After placing flowers on the grave, I took out the last unopened letter from Sarah's box. I'd been saving it, though I wasn't sure why. "Do you want me to give you privacy?" Megan asked. I shook my head. "Stay. Please." The envelope was simply marked, "When you're ready to move forward." With Megan beside me, I opened it and read aloud. "My dearest David, if you're reading this, then time has passed, perhaps a lot of time. I hope the sharp edges of grief have softened for you. I hope you found reasons to smile again, to laugh, to look forward rather than back. I have one last thing to tell you, something I couldn't say when I was still with you because it would have been too painful for us both. I know my sister, David. I know her heart. And I've seen the way she looks at you, not with envy, but with understanding of what I found in you. When I asked her to look after you, it wasn't just for your sake. It was for hers too. And maybe, if I'm being completely honest, it was a little bit selfish of me. Because the thought of the two people I love most in this world finding comfort in each other brings me peace. I don't know what has happened between you in the time since I've been gone. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But whatever it is, I want you both to know that you have my blessing. Not my permission, you don't need that, but my wholehearted blessing to find happiness however and with whomever you choose. All my love, now and always, Sarah." I looked up from the letter to find Megan crying silently, her hand over her mouth. "She knew," Megan whispered. Somehow, she knew. "Sarah always did see things the rest of us missed," I said, carefully folding the letter and returning it to its envelope. We stood there by her grave, the weight of her words settling around us like a gentle embrace. Not pushing us together, but removing the barrier of guilt that had kept us apart. "I don't know what this means for us," I said finally. "But I'd like to find out. If you would." Megan reached for my hand, her fingers intertwining with mine. I'd like that too. We walked slowly back to our cars, hand in hand, neither of us certain of what the future held but both feeling, for the first time in a long time, that it was okay to find out. 5 years after Sarah's funeral, I stood in a different church. Not as a pallbearer this time, but as a groom. Megan walked down the aisle toward me, beautiful and entirely herself. In my pocket was a small note, the last thing Sarah had written to me, carried close to my heart. As Megan reached me, she leaned in and whispered, "She's here with us, you know." And I believed she was. Not in sorrow, but in joy. Not in absence, but in the love that had grown from the seeds she had planted. When the minister asked if anyone objected to our union, there was only silence and smiles. But in that silence, I felt a blessing, one given long ago by a woman who had loved us both enough to want our happiness above all else. "She didn't want you to be alone," Megan had whispered at the funeral. Words that had seemed like simple comfort then had become a prophecy, a promise, a path forward. As we spoke our vows, I made a silent one to Sarah as well, to honor the love we had shared by embracing the love that had grown in its wake. Not a replacement, but a continuation of the capacity to love that she had awakened in me. Life doesn't always give us the endings we expect. Sometimes it takes everything we thought we knew and transforms it into something we never could have imagined. Sometimes the deepest grief can, with time and care, give way to unexpected joy. If this story has touched you in any way, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories of love, loss, and the remarkable resilience of the human heart. Remember that even in our darkest moments, there can be light waiting to break through, sometimes from the most unexpected sources.